commissioners love punctualities. Plus, as I look out here, I think everybody I had on the list is here. Plus some that I wasn't expecting, so I think we're good to go. This is the 5th time now I've had the pleasure of introducing Ben to a Cleveland audience. Been so kind and gracious as to come here after each 5 books that he's published to share the Dharma with us. And it seems like every time he writes a book, it's pretty serious. That's why we were all chomping at the bit, literally, to get into your latest book. So the day it came out, I'd venture to say 10 of us or so, the package arrived. And we were ready to roll. So we've been at it for, I think, a couple of months now. And it's such a great pleasure for us to welcome you and to hear it kind of right from the horse's mouth rather than hearing it through me. As you have to go through each Thursday. But, so this is really a great privilege we have. Thanks to them to hear the teachings dealing with one of the most important sutras in all of Mahayana Buddhism. So that you'll leave here feeling very glad that you've come. So turn it over to Ben.
Thank you so much, Dean. A warm welcome and for inviting me here. And it's just kind of sweet. I'm just noticing acoustically, this seems like an interesting space. If you can't hear me, please just make a gesture. Sometimes when I really want to emphasize things, I talk really quietly. It's not my strongest rhetorical suit. So feel free to just be like, hey, yeah, here. Yeah, but so sweet to come here and just see people wanting to arrive early and take care of things, make the space welcoming, understanding that we make the possibility for practice to occur together, and that's the only way it ever happens. And so it's just sweet to come here and see people doing that. So, and I'm lucky because then I just get to show up and be, come into that space and something will happen, which I think for the next 40 minutes or so will be me saying words. So I will do my best to honor our tradition and your attention. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to dive in. Yes, I have this new book. I didn't just write it. I wrote it a few years ago. It's finally published, called Inside the Flower Garland Sutra. And this, some of you have been reading this book for 2 months, and some of you may be like, I don't know what a sutra is. So this talk is going to be fairly general. And then tomorrow during the retreat, I'll probably do some more sort of narrowly focused teachings coming from the teaching from this. So anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time on sort of the historical background and so forth, but I do want to say a couple things. So the Flower Garland Sutra is a totally massively immense piece of literature. It's the largest sutra in the Buddhist canons. It's about 1,500 pages in small print in an English language edition. It was compiled from many other standalone sutras sometime around the middle of the first millennium, so about 1,500 years ago. The earliest parts of it are probably about 2,000 years old. And the sutra is very influential, and maybe I'll begin to point to that during the course of the talk. But I just want to talk about some of the main themes of the Flower Garland Sutra. So, abundance. One is abundantly long. And that's not an accident. That is actually one of the characteristics of the Flower Garland traditions are this emphasis on things keep flowering. It's called Flower Garland. What do flowers do? They flower. They just keep going. If you go in the backyard of the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, you will see hundreds, maybe thousands of flowers. And then they will go in next year, more. They keep going. So abundance as a way of viewing the world, which allows us to find freedom. So as I say later, at some point in the book, basically much Buddhist teaching will focus on finding ways to let go of our attachment to things so we can be free. Flower Garland tradition emphasizes seeing that the world is so replete and abundant with wonderful things that you wouldn't ever bother to try and hold on to anything because you're totally confident that that abundance will continue to manifest. So it's a very different lens for approaching the same thing, which is non-attachment. So the abundance is a big theme. Diversity of people, diversity of practices, diversity of needs, diversity of capacities is heavily emphasized in the text, especially in the last chapter, which is about 450 pages long. The Huayan Sutra, which I'll talk a little bit about more later, and we'll teach from tomorrow. And one of the reasons that I wrote this book and wanted to share Huayan teachings, Huayan means flower garland in Chinese, is because we live in a multicultural situation. And it's very evident that people are quite diverse and have diverse needs, capacities, and viewpoints. I think if you were to just go and interview 100 people in the environs of Cleveland, Ohio, and ask them, for example, what do you think about Charlie Kirk? You would find a great deal of diversity of opinions. It's just real. So this is a sutra that actively emphasizes the importance of recognizing and working with this diversity in diverse ways. Unlimitedness. This kind of goes back to abundance, but definitely trying to open us up. It's so easy to see the world in a limited way. And this is always trying to expand the frame of our viewpoint. Interdependence, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. Social engagement. So in the Huayan Sutra in particular, there are like 53 teachers, and they teach by doing things like giving food, making medicine, making art, giving talks, sailing ships. That is the method of teaching that these people are using. So we have all these great teachers whose way of teaching is by doing things in the social sphere that helps people. I think this also is a timely set of teachings. So moving on from the sutra. So this book is called Inside the Flower Garland Sutra, Huayan Buddhism and the Modern World. So in Chinese, in Sanskrit, flower garland is avatamsaka. So the Avatamsaka Sutra. In Chinese, that's translated to the Huayan Jing. Huayan means flower garland. So you get a whole Buddhist movement in China in the middle of the first millennium, which lasted for several hundred years and was very, very influential, particularly on Zen, which is called Huayan Buddhism. It's sort of inspired by the sutra, but it is its own distinct thing. It takes a lot of the same themes, in particular, an enormous emphasis on interdependence, on finding every possible way in which you can see that things depend on each other. Because you might be like, well, I learned in my first Buddhist class ever that everything's interdependent. But the thing is, most people very rarely actually see how interdependent everything is. And so Huayan is constantly using different strategies, different ways of looking at things to help us continually to deepen our ability to see how things depend on each other. So this is one of the reasons why Thich Nhat Hanh, who is like one of the greatest Buddhist teachers of the 20th century, I would think, certainly I think, many people think, and Huayan is one of the two main places that he takes for inspiration for his teachings. And because there's this emphasis on social engagement, and if you've ever, read something about how you look at a piece of paper and you see the sun in it and you see the soil and the hands of the person who made it, and he's directly employing Huayan technique, and he does this very, very frequently. So in terms of looking for ways to have a socially engaged Buddhist movement, Huayan gives us a lot of excellent tools. Now, along with interdependence comes an emphasis in Huayan on particularity. So as opposed to like the Heart Sutra is like everything's empty. That's not particular, that's generalizing or universalizing emptiness onto everything. Huayan is like each thing is the Dharma. Everything. So this is pointing us towards taking care of what's right in front of us with our whole heart all the time. And I'll talk a little bit about ways in which that's quite distinct from other forms of Buddhism. But you see this emphasis on particularity really in Soto Zen, where we have so much emphasis on taking care of actual material things. Like I was just talking to some people about Soto Zen sewing. I don't think in very many other Buddhist traditions, sewing is like one of the main really important practices. But the people who brought Soto Zen to the United States really thought this is a great way to help people see that our practice is not about an abstract thing or a particular kind of experience. It's about taking care of things right in front of you with your whole heart, with the aspiration to free everyone from suffering. Okay, so the sutra, Flower Garland Sutra, the Huayan tradition that emerges from it. And then lastly, this book is a line-by-line commentary on a text called the Ocean Seal Chart. It has many names: Ocean Seal Chart, Song of Dharma Nature, Song of the Huayan One Vehicle Dharma Realm. Those are the three main names. Plus you get the Korean versions because it's a Korean text, but like many Korean Buddhist texts and Japanese Buddhist texts, it's written in Chinese characters. So Chinese characters were kind of like Latin in Europe. I don't know if you know about this, but in Europe for a long time, written language was predominantly Latin. It was a language of religious scholars. So you have a similar thing in East Asia where Chinese characters are used, but they're pronounced differently in the different countries. Anyway, 210 Chinese characters, a Korean text that is intended to be a concise expression of the whole Huayan tradition, which is great because you have the Flower Garland Sutra, just this massive efflorescence of imagery and amazing psychedelic storytelling. And then the Huayan movement is very philosophical. There's like 20 pages, tight analytical philosophy. And then Huayan, the author of the Ocean Seal Chart, was like, well, that's pretty complicated. Let's make something anybody can chant after morning meditation, and hopefully it will be inspiring. So this is the text that I use as the backbone for the book's exposition of this material. So I want to talk about some of these themes. Abundance. So in the Ocean Seal Chart, the Song of Dharma Nature, the Song of the Seal of the Huayan One Vehicle Dharma Realm, there are 3 lines that say, in the midst of Buddha's Ocean Seal Samadhi, the abundant manifestations of wish fulfillment are inconceivable. This rain of jewels benefits all life, filling all space. All beings benefit according to their capacities. So if you're not used to this kind of literature, you might already be like, what is even happening here? And I'm not going to deeply unpack all those lines, but I don't know if you noticed, abundant manifestations of wish-fulfilling jewels everywhere, benefiting everyone. Wow, that sounds pretty good. And of course, you might go, yeah, it sounds nice, but it's not true. Okay, that's fine. You can perceive the world however you want. Actually, you probably mostly can perceive the world the way you're conditioned to perceive it, but you do have some agency. These lines are about conditioning the mind to perceive abundance. Abundance in many ways. One, in the most basic way of just feeling like what we need is here. But I will say that there are numerous commentaries in the Korean tradition on the Ocean Seal Chart, which is a very, very influential text in Korea on Korean Buddhism. And all the commentaries I found, they all said when we talk about the world being full of jewels, there being jewels everywhere, which, by the way, in the Flower Garland Sutra, the word jewel probably occurs like 20,000 times. Like it's just people are like, why more jewels? And I'm like, well, they're trying to show you something, that there's some kind of beauty. And this thing that you think is hard to get is always available. But anyway, all the commentators say that jewels represent skillful means. The world is full of the capacity of human beings to do things that are beneficial. This is the abundance that we're really pointing towards. So just think about this. There are 8 billion people in the world, and actually a whole bunch of other sentient beings. But so let's just say sentient beings, humans, whatever you want. We'll stick with humans for now. Every one of them can do something beneficial right now. This is the basic tenet on which all of Buddhism is built. Sentience means the capacity to do something beneficial now. So 8 billion people. Is that not way more mind-boggling than a universe full of jewels? The universe full of jewels is an image that's trying to point us to see an abundance that is way more extravagant than a universe full of jewels, which is the capacity of all of us to do something beneficial right now, which is always here. So having said that, there is also a great deal of emphasis on abundance in terms of meeting people's actual conventional material needs. As I said, in the sutra, there's a lot of just feeding people, providing people shelter, basic safety from oppression, things like that. So I want to read you a little passage here. This teaching is to evoke a sense of abundance. It is to cut through anxiety, alienation, and clinging. Early Buddhist texts focus on giving things up so we can be free of our clinging. Huayan emphasizes seeing a world so replete with riches that we feel no need to hold on. Huayan teachers understand that these abundant manifestations require our actual giving. In his commentary on this line, Pabyong writes, "It may be compared to the wish-fulfilling gem possessed by a wheel-turning king. If it is kept in the royal treasury, it does not rain down all manner of treasures." This is a very standard idea in Buddhist culture that a powerful king will have a mani jewel, which means a wish-fulfilling jewel, which can provide the needs of his kingdom. But they're saying, that's great, but you actually have to give people things. In a Pali Canon text, a king gets wise counsel on how to deal with bandits overrunning the realm. His advisor tells him that punishment and violence will not end the epidemic of crime. But with this plan, you can completely eliminate the plague of crime. To those in the kingdom who are engaged in cultivating crops and raising cattle, let your majesty distribute grain and fodder. To those in trade, give capital. To those in government service, assign proper living wages. Then those people, being intent on their own occupations, will not harm the kingdom. Your majesty's revenues will be great. The land will be tranquil and not be beset by thieves. And the people, with joy in their hearts, playing with their children, will dwell in open houses. So in case that sounded complicated, the idea is if you are in a powerful position of government authority and you're concerned with crime, what you should do is give people resources. You may know that this is a common theme right now. People are advocating for this in very many ways. And I will not say that I'm a police abolitionist or a prison abolitionist by any means. But, and I think the topic of prison abolition and police abolition may seem like a distant memory from 5 years ago. But the basic idea of that movement is a movement of radical nonviolence that is about providing resources to communities instead of using violence to suppress them. And, you can go all you want into the details, but there are many people thinking about this like, oh, we could focus on actually giving people what they need. It's not a new idea. It's in the Pali Canon, which is the earliest layer of text from the Buddhist tradition. There's actually 2 very similar passages on other kings clearly related to it in the Flower Garland Sutra. So anyway, the other thing is, sometimes people will be like, well, this teaching on abundance is great, but, there's people, in this neighborhood who do not have housing. There are people in this neighborhood who have food insecurity or going hungry tonight. There are people who do not have access to mental health resources or chemical dependency resources. There are people who can't get their insulin. And that's just in the wealthiest country, one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So I understand that when we talk about abundance, it can be kind of activating for people. But many of the people talking about abundance now in the United States are people whose main interest is in transforming our culture so we take care of each other. Because the reason that people don't actually give to each other and take care of each other is they're coming from a scarcity mindset. So I hear many, many people who are interested in social transformation and taking care of people who have fewer resources and people with very few resources talking about the value of an abundance view. And I will also just quote, going back a little bit further, from Luther Standing Bear, who was a colleague of Black Elk, who was a famous Lakota teacher. And there's a couple of books. One of them is called Black Elk Speaks, which is predominantly transcribed talks from Black Elk. But his friend is quoted in Black Elk Speaks, Luther Standing Bear. Luther Standing Bear said, "Only to the white man was nature a wilderness full of wild animals and savage people. To us, the earth was bountiful, and we were surrounded by the blessings of the great mystery." And over again, you will see indigenous people talking about the value of seeing the abundance of the world rather than seeing it from a scarcity lens as a means of being in a much more healthy relationship with the earth itself and one another. So I would like to do a little abundance meditation. Abundance meditation. What's that? I'm going to find out with you. So this meditation will involve a little bit of visualization. So it may be beneficial to close your eyes. And I'm just going to invite you to just let your attention settle in the sensations in the body. If you find it helpful to bring attention to the breathing as a means to be aware of the body, that's good. And now I'm going to invite you to engage your capacity to imagine and think and visualize and all that wonderful stuff. And just begin to think of things in your life, perhaps things that have happened recently or you've experienced recently or received recently uh, that supported you or were beneficial to you. This could be anything from like uh, the second spoon of cornflakes that you had this morning, and then you could do the third one and the fourth if you wanted to. But you could do the whole bowl all at once, however you want to do it. Or some person that you're in relationship, or maybe a moment of connection you have with a person. Yeah. Just let your mind rove over things that have happened recently that you've experienced that have been supportive and beneficial to you. See if you can just be creative and let it flow. Okay, well, let's just let go of all this imagining. Just let the attention rest back and the sensations in the body. Now I'm going to invite you to just notice things that are present in the moment that you are feeling in the body, seeing, hearing, smelling, or tasting. And just notice things that are here right now um, that you are grateful for. And if you're not really noticing anything, you could just try being like, oh, I guess I'm grateful for breathing or whatever. Just noticing present moment phenomena with some gratitude. Now we can let go of the thinking, this discerning, just rest in what we're hearing, sensations in the body, smells, visual field, emotions, thoughts. And just open up to the possibility, or perhaps just find the experience of seeing all this with a sense of appreciation. Not with words of appreciation or thoughts. It's kind of a emotional tone. All right, well, you're welcome to keep appreciating things. But if you'd like, you can open the eyes, adjust the posture, kind of reorient yourself. So, puts me in mind of a book of Maizumi Roshi's teaching called Appreciate Your Life. Pretty good. Pretty good. All right, so I'm going to talk about a few more themes from this whole thing. And then I'm going to see if we could engage in something a little more dialogic. That would be like you saying things and then me saying things. Anyway, so I'm going to move on to another theme. So this theme of abundance, interdependence. Generally, I think a lot of people who know something about Huayan, that's like 72 people in the whole world. Oh, now it's like 92. So they said, what is Huayan about? There was the interdependence is really by far the biggest, most emphasized theme. So in the Ocean Seal chart, Song of Dharma Nature, we have a series of lines that say, within one is all, within many is one. One is all, the many are one. Within one mode of dust is contained the 10 directions. Within each phenomena, it is also thus. One moment of mind is immeasurable eons, and immeasurable eons are one moment of mind. So we see the entire universe, interdependently contained within each thing, no matter how tiny or how brief. Yes. What's it say? Dogen writes in Genjo Koan, each reflection, no matter how long or short its duration, manifests the vastness of the dewdrop and realizes all of time or something. So many times Dogen Zenji, the founders of Soto Zen, says things that clearly and distinctly evoke this Huayan worldview. Anyway, I want to read you a little passage here from the book on this subject. I'm commenting on the line, within each phenomena is contained the 10 directions. Empress Wu is widely considered the only female sovereign in the history of China. That's like over 5,000 years of recorded history. She was closely associated with Huayan and drew authority from claiming the power of the Avatamsaka Sutra's main icon, Vairochana Buddha. I do not think theocratic government is a good idea, just to be clear. However, there is something inspiring in the fact that this singular matriarchal figure drew authority from these particular teachings. This authority was surely related not only to the many powerful female teachers in the final chapter of the Avatamsaka, but also to the Huayan idea that each part contains the whole. Fatsang, who was one of the great Huayan teachers, Fatsang was the empress's teacher. He was looking for a way to convey the interdependence and non-obstruction that defined Huayan. He built a small room whose walls were all mirrors and ceiling and floor, and placed a lamp and a Buddha statue inside, and entered with the empress. In the endless reflections, she realized the vastness of their relationship. After they had some time to get accustomed to the spaciousness, Fatsang held out a small crystal ball. They looked inside the tiny reflective object and saw the entire space of repeating Buddhas, selves, and light in the palm of his hand. And I'm going to skip forward a little bit to a passage related to the same event. Fatsang brought Empress Wu into the mirrored hall, full of an infinite regress of reflections of the lamp, the Buddha, the Empress, and Fatsang himself. They saw the tiny and the vast, the particular and the universal, integrated before their eyes. At the end of the presentation, Fatsang said that although he had found this way to show that one is all and many is one, he couldn't find a simple way to show that this is true of not just things, but also of times. It's hard to see that every moment is all time, and all time is in this moment. So, the teacher who founded our Zen Center, Dainin Katagiri, and is chanted here regularly when you chant your ancestors, one of the books that Andrea Martin edited his talks is called Each Moment is the Universe, which is a quote from his teachings, which is a direct quote from here. So, one moment of mind, by the way, mind here means the totality of experience. So in Buddhism, mind can mean a lot of things. There are many different words that get translated as mind, but here we're talking about that which is cognized, seen, smelled, heard, tasted, or felt in the body. All of that is mind because you only get it insofar as you know it. You know it right now. Like, I'm seeing something. You don't have any access to things seen outside of your seeing of them. So in Buddhism, we call that mind. We like to think there's a world of objects, but like we don't get to them through any other means but actually having the experience of it, right? So when we're saying one moment of mind is the entire universe, we're saying for us as sentient beings, we have pretty much one thing. This thing, like a moment of experience that is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and mental events. And it's always gone by the time we think we figured it out, right? It's seamless. But that's like where life occurs. And it's the totality of the ground on which we can practice. Moments of like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. So they're saying, oh yeah, that seems a little bit small. Oh, suddenly it's so small. I'm just this room. But it's everything. Because everything conditions the arising of each moment you have. You cannot subtract your particular experience from the rest of the universe. There's no way to go, I'm going to go back 2 years and take second number 372 out of day 473 and take it out. Or I'm going to take out just the part that happened in one house. You can't do it. There's no removing the immediate experience of your life from the totality. And there's no totality without this. So they are always completely intimate. We'll read another thing related to time, mind. So, Huayan is the author of the text we're commenting on, the seal of the Huayan, one vehicle, Dharma realm. So he's a Korean teacher, but he went to China and came back to Korea. So when Huayan traveled to China for the Dharma, he met a woman named Sunmyo who fell in love with him. He told her that his vow of celibacy meant he could not requite her love. And her ardor to protect him on his path transformed her into a dragon. After years of caring for him on his travels, she became a great stone hovering over invaders outside one of the first temples he founded. She is perched there still, a great stone guardian overlooking the temple of the floating stone, Museoksa, near Yeongju City in Korea. The times of myth, of history, and of the present can collapse in a good tale. Trauma, too, can make the interpenetration of times vivid. Yesterday, someone described being overwhelmed by emotions during an argument with a friend. Suddenly, they had the jarring experience of being a 3-year-old child, feeling the same rage, the same need to hold someone at bay who wouldn't say no, that was showing up in their present life. This collapsing of time and identity rang true to my own experience when I was receiving treatment for post-traumatic stress. Somehow, I could be totally aware of my own bodily sensations, my own present moment sensory environment, my own agency and adulthood, and also absolutely be the terrified child consumed by shame, terror, and rage. A child who in linear time had grown up 30 years ago. Teachings on karma have much in common with contemporary theories of trauma. So does the Huayan emphasis on the interpenetration of past, present, and future. Scientific data show the deep relationship between a child struggling to find food and safety in an impoverished neighborhood and an adult being pushed into a prison cell. Understanding karma can help us know the importance of our actions. Knowing interdependence opens up space for compassion and shows that we can create conditions for freedom for everyone. James Baldwin once wrote, "The great force of history lies in that we carry it within us and are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways. History is literally present in all that we do." It's very much like a karma teaching. William Faulkner wrote, "The past is never dead. It isn't even past." It's a little closer to Huayan. Anyway, these ideas may have some utility. So one great thing about our meditation practice is that, especially if we're doing Zazen, which is so simple, not trying to accomplish anything, figure anything out, make anything happen, cause our minds to be any particular thing, just opening the hand of thought. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, mind. It's already here. That's it. So easy. All we're doing is putting down the activity of mind that divides. It terms the past as something separate from the present, The future is something present, separate from the present. You is something separate from me. My mind is separate from my body. My heart is separate from my mind. People who disagree with me as separate from me. Oh, maybe I would like to keep them separate. They're not separate. It's just not true. So, another big emphasis of the Huayan tradition is particularity and activity. So that is because the entire universe is present in each thing, then each thing is utterly precious and important and valuable. So this really shows up in Soto Zen teaching and in Zen in general, but Soto Zen in particular. So if you are studying like in a polycanon-based or insight Buddhist tradition, you'll likely spend a lot of time learning to analyze the constituent parts of the mind. So you practice meditation, you start to see, oh, here is desire arising. Here is aversion arising. Here is grasping of desire. Here is the more subtle gradations of desire. This one is like hunger. So you start to be like, oh, mental phenomena are labeled and categorized. You come to a Soto Zen temple and they say things like, please don't move the cushions with your feet. Please clear your cushion off before you stand up and place the cushion so it looks beautiful and centered. Please hold your teacup with reverence. Please put your shoes so they're neat, tidy. My teacher, Tim Burkett, went to his teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, after an utterly shattering awakening experience. He was like, wow. And Suzuki was like, wonderful, wonderful. And they said, look at your shoes. Because Suzuki's shoes were just nicely lined up on the rail. And Tim's were like kicked off, one upside down. This is Soto Zen, taking care of actual things. So this ends up being a real particular emphasis, I think, maybe in a lot of Chinese Buddhism, an interest in the actual material world. As opposed to like a lot of Indian Buddhism is very much like internal looking. So, but just taking care of things. Taking care of things because you care. The word that matters is care. Another word for that might be compassion. So anyway, I'm going to read you a little something about particularity and take care of things. So this is a commentary on the line from the text, within one is all, within many is one. If you want to sum up Huayan teachings in a single line, this is as good as it gets. The idea that each thing contains everything and everything is holding each thing pervades the tradition. The implications are vast. When I interviewed folks for an article about Tomoe Katagiri, who was central in transmitting the practice of hand-sewing Zen religious garments to North America, Andrea Martin said, she continually showed that everything matters. If the whole world is here in this cup of tea, this stitch, or this bow, don't you want to take care of it? The Huayan master Jian wrote, because in the Huayan teaching, phenomena are the teaching. Whatever phenomena are brought up, inexhaustible teachings are included. Because everything is precious, discernment about how to care for things is precious. Once, Tomoe was carefully making us tea. Apropos of something we'd been talking about a moment before, I began to quote a line from the Metta Sutra. She put down the tea things and faced me with her whole being, relaxed, poised, and alert. When the quote was over, she returned to the tea. I thought what I was saying was interesting. I guess she likes sutras better. Anyway, in Huisan's commentary on the poem, he repeatedly refers to the teaching of the 10 coins. This is a common Huayan metaphor. If you have 10 coins, any one of them completely contains all 10. Or if you remove that one, there is no 10. Within the 10 coins, each one is completely contained in the 10. Or if the 10 were gone, so too would be the 1. More subtly, if part of the 10 were gone, the 1 would no longer be the exact same coin it once was. It wouldn't be the one that is thus in this particular relational context. If a bowl of soup costs 10 coins, the 1 as part of 10 coins is sufficient. As part of 9, it is not. It is practical for people to agree that 1 coin always has the same value as 1 coin, but this is a limited view. A $50 parking ticket means something very different to someone who is hungry and poor than it does to someone with thousands, millions, or billions of dollars in the bank. The power of 1 coin to buy a cup of tea or 10 coins to buy a bowl of soup contains the entire universe, which shows up in the form of a mutual agreement between people about the value of a piece of metal. Let us practice looking at money not just in terms of what we have and what we can get, but how this money impacts the whole and hence particular individuals within that whole. Our shared agreements about money often hide the fact that within the whole of our economy, many individual people work all day for just enough money to live beneath a freeway overpass. These shared agreements can make it seem that someone who doesn't have a job deserves to live under a freeway overpass. Seeing that one is all, we can do better. And just thinking of the importance of particularity and activity, can't resist quoting Hannah Arendt, who was a Jewish philosopher, one of the early philosophers really trying to understand what fascism and authoritarianism were about, how they came to be, how they could be ended. A Jew who escaped Europe just a few years before the Holocaust began in earnest, spent her life in the United States. She once wrote, "Even the smallest act in the most limited circumstances bears the seed of boundlessness." I'm going to read one more passage here. And this is a really big theme in the Flower Garland Sutra is social engagement. The Gandhavyuha Sutra, or Entry into the Elm of Reality, is the third of the key standalone sutras that were incorporated into the Avatamsaka. I listed the other 2 earlier in the text. The Gandhavyuha constitutes the final and longest chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. It tells the story of a young man, Sudana, who commits his life to liberation from suffering for everyone and everything, and of his long and wondrous pilgrimage on the path. He meets with 53 teachers, each of whom shows him a staggering level of spiritual attainment, and then ends their meeting by saying they can't possibly know the way to liberation. Each one sends him on to visit another teacher to keep practicing. The teachers include beggars, queens, boys and girls, monks, nuns, rich men, mathematicians, sailors, perfumers, goddesses, bark-clad outcasts, folks who change genders, people dressed in rags, those bedecked in jewels, lots of jewels, a prince who almost loses his life working to free all the prisoners in his land, and great bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, and Samantabhadra. They teach in myriad ways, all different and appropriate to themselves and those they meet. They teach by feeding people through physical touch, by making beautiful scents and palaces, by writing, by teaching meditation, by expounding the Dharma, by revealing suffering, and by guiding people through storms. This sutra provides inspiration for those of us looking to create multicultural, engaged Buddhist communities. And I like to engage in what people might call activism. And what that means is I go where there are people who want people to be free, and I try and give my full attention to what we're doing. Pretty good. Someone the other day was like, wow, we had that beautiful candlelight vigil, some of us, we don't want to be activists. We just, that's more like what we want to do. I was like, that wasn't activism? What is it? Activism, what does it mean? I don't exactly know. And they gave a talk for Zen Mountain Monastery on this material a couple of weeks ago online. And they're living in a monastery. So like talking about going out of the community to engage in social transformation is kind of like a difficult topic. You know, they're like, but we're monastics. I'm not here to decide what other people should do. And the whole point of this text is we need all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. But at the bottom, this is Mahayana Buddhism. So the hope is we are helping more and more people to do all the different kinds of things they're doing because they want everyone to be free and to develop skillfulness in doing those things so they are effective at helping everyone be free. That is something that can come from viewing the world as an abundance of riches of possibility. I'm with these people. I've been with people I really disagreed with. And if I can remember, there's still some chance to do something that will help us be more free right now. It's probably not just telling you you're wrong and stupid, right? I don't think that's going to get us there. So anyway, there's so much possibility. And these texts are really about trying to open up with some joyfulness to how much there is. And I think now it is possible that some of you will say things, which would be great. So I'm going to invite folks to, you can certainly ask questions, or if you want to make little reflections, that's nice. There are many people, and it's wonderful to hear lots of voices. So brief reflections are really cool because then there's room for lots of people to make them. But anyway, yeah. What do you have to say? Yes.
The comments that you were just making remind me of I was watching Cheryl, and she had some thinking about what's going on politically right now. Maybe, but he was talking about they want to have doubts or what to open up and speak about what was what, and it's very much like the last one. More and more people are starting, but everybody needs to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this would even make room for no speaking at all. So like one of the teachers that Sudana encounters is like sitting on a mountain by themselves, and like it's pretty evident they're not talking to a lot of people. And that's cool too. You know what I mean? Like people will get really, when I first came to practice, people were like, hermits, that's stupid. You know, hermits, what were they doing? And it's like, well, I don't know. Some of them left like 2 poems that completely changed my life. And those emerged from a lifetime of hermit practice. Or actually, I have a colleague who's coming to give a talk in a residency at our Zen Center. She just spent the last 4 months in solo silent retreat. And that's great. So you don't even have to speak, but you can. That's a good option.
I have another question.
Okay.
If you could speak about mysticism in Buddhism, because it seems to me often that if I open to whatever challenge, and when you talk by Shitu, living on the top of the mountain, how do we know? I mean, does Buddhism reflect that even if you're traveling mode, that's where that is.
Yeah, well, if one is all and many is one, and immeasurable distant eons are one mode of mind, nothing is outside of the totality. So there's no way that anyone is separate from you right now, or me. So yes, but it's not like, the idea is not that somehow there's like laser beams of superpower Dharma stuff that shoot out. Actually, there's a whole bunch of that in the Flower Garland Sutra, but like huge amounts of it, like a whole bunch of the sutra occurs within basically beams of light that have emerged from a pore in the Buddha's body. But That's, evoking something. But the nice thing about Huayan is a little bit more philosophical. So like the sutra itself is very magical. But it is my opinion that you can't not be engaged in the world. So then the question is, how? So we had a series of meetings at our Zen Center called How Do We Engage in Social Transformation? And when we put them up, it was very clear. Everyone was like, we need to get out and do something. And then we wanted to talk about it. And it was great. We had great conversations. But then I was like, I need to give a talk. And I gave a talk called How Do We Engage in Social Transformation? And that started by saying, you can't ever do anything else. Every single moment of sentience is a participation in the social sphere. Even if you have withdrawn from it, you're engaging by withdrawing. So another way I'll look at this is like, say you have a bad relationship and you're like, I'm ending that relationship. You didn't end it, you changed it. And now it's one in which maybe you don't talk to the person, and that may be a really good idea, but you're still doing the relationship. So here, we're doing Huayan Buddhism. So the idea is to say, I want to make these decisions based on an aspiration that everyone be free, and trying to see what would be a good way to do that. And that's where you come to, maybe a bunch of us should be using our voices right now, because if we just are really quiet, no one will know that we care about each other, for example. So there might be this moment of discernment that's like some more public action, which is wonderful. So that's kind of a rambling answer. It happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're looking at page 68 in the book. And so you say, within one is all, within many is one. And you go on to say, each phenomenon is determining every other phenomenon simultaneously being determined by every. And then Ramadas said, I believe in the systems book, where everything is connected to everything, therefore if I change it, all changes. My question is, how am I able to work on myself or change any more than what's been determined by everything that's connected and is determining what I'm doing while I'm determining everything else does?
Yeah. So one thing that Buddhism will not say is that because like the entire mass of conditions arrive and there is this, and then that will make the next one. And it's like slices of time that are made by the past. Well, so one reason, and this gets very complicated, so I'm kind of want to avoid it, it's because everything's already empty. So actually the moment that's created is also not real and not an absolute or graspable, determinable thing with any boundaries that are anything but ideas that we have. So that eliminates the possibility of determinism, because there's nothing being determined. Everything is empty. So that's one antidote to the problem of determinism. But you're onto a much more difficult problem, which is, why do we act? And so Buddhism will never give up on the idea that our actions matter, because that's the basis of the entire tradition. So Buddha says there are four noble truths. There's suffering, and you can do something about it. Now, you will get some Buddhist schools that really get pretty close to the edge. So Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, which is a Pure Land sect from Japan, they're basically like, the Buddha already made it so everything is realization. So you don't need to do anything but be grateful for the fact that it's realization already. And that's not even a practice. Just be grateful. But that is kind of a practice. So, by the way, doesn't that sound a little bit like the practice we did earlier? Cultivating gratitude for what has actually arrived. Coming back to your question. So within Buddhist theory, the idea is that we experience things through the realms of our conditioned mind. In every moment, we're planting seeds into that field of conditioning. That's what karma is about. Karma is saying that every moment of sentience plant seeds for what sentience will be like. And that is, without that, Buddhism actually doesn't make very much sense, in my opinion. Although people will find ways to make it make sense. But it's hard for me to make sense of it. So that means that, you know, Ram Dass said, if I change, everything changes. There's no if. You've already changed. It's like, how long is it since you changed? A millionth of a second ago. A boundaryless millionth of a second ago. We are always changing. We are participants in that change in every moment. So what we can do is we can say, right now, it's like this. Can I have some compassion? Can I cultivate some patience? Can I be aware of this body? Can I be aware of you? Can I care about you? And the answer often is yes. Maybe not as much as you want to, but if you just go, oh, yes, I would like to pay attention. Like in meditation, you can't say, I'm going to sit for 30 minutes and have no thoughts and be totally mindful. I don't think. Can anyone do that? No one I know. But what you can say is in any given moment, you can just be like, oh, the breath. You can do that. That is a moment of just being, caring about what's here, your body. In this relational field in which practice can occur, you're with other people, they ask you a question, you could say, oh, I'm listening. Just here. And you may be like, oh, I love what you're saying. And you say, I don't like it. Oh, aversion. No, maybe I want to see my aversion. That's good to do too. But anyway, those moments of choice are what create what is experienced by sentient beings. And yeah, is that absolutely true? I have no idea. Is it a basic tenet without which Buddhism doesn't make much sense? Yes, I think so. And does it make life meaningful? Incredibly so. It's like you wake up in the morning, you're like, wow, I'm participating in the universe. I literally wake up like that some days. I wish I did it every day. I'll be like, wow, look at this. So, thanks.
I think you just changed my theory of free will a little bit.
All right, keep playing. Keep playing. Theories can have value. Yeah.
We're kind of playing off of that. You mentioned there's a choice every moment to choose what to do. Everything is conditioned on 10 million other things, which kind of lends this idea of determinism. So I suppose, where do we find this choice, or what exactly is that? I don't know if I'm putting it right.
Well, I just say, Buddhism is, you might say it's phenomenological. So it doesn't get in, it looks at what it's like to have an experience. Most of the teachers about like, what is experience like? What is going on here? And most people I know will notice that if you just sit and practice meditation, there's a lot of stuff happening and you can just be like, oh, I'm going to notice the breath. And it seems pretty noticeable that it seems like a choice. And people will often notice when it feel like they're not making choices. Like you're just totally absorbed in like a chain of thinking. You're like, I sat down to meditate. And then you're like, why the heck do those Maroons in Washington, D.C. do the stuff I don't like? And they're so stupid. And you'd be like, whoa. Yeah, that moment where you're like, wow, what am I doing? Right? It's like you are unconscious. So that moment of noticing, that's consciousness. And you'll notice there's a sense of choice there. And is it absolutely real thing? I don't think so. I have no idea. I don't know how I can determine that. But is it something that you can actually see in your experience that helps you to feel like you can do something? I think so. And that's really important because being powerless is not helping. Like, I don't know much about Western philosophy or determinism, but I'm just like, I'm interested in people being free from suffering. that precedes my being interested in Mahayana Buddhism. But Mahayana Buddhism was like, well, this seems like a pretty good way of looking at this. So yeah, I just don't know how determinism, arrives you at a happier life. Maybe, but I feel like if you just notice, all right, seems like I made a choice there. That may be enough, but you can keep looking. And of course, you can also see that that's empty as well. But yeah, I think you will find it feels like you are a participant in the world. Doesn't that seem true to your experience?
Yeah, I feel like there's a mixture of determinism and then, like you said, this awareness that comes and then you maybe can go another direction. Maybe it's the really cultivating that awareness so you're not running on this autopilot.
That would be one of the basic ideas of Buddhism. That's what mindfulness basically means, is the capacity to see what is here. So instead of operating from karma, we're operating from a vow. Yeah. So thank you. Other voices. Yes.
You talked about abundance at the beginning, and it struck me as I was driving in here today. I heard a story about a man who was a tattoo artist, and he realized that he had the tools to. And so on his day off, once a week, for 10 years now, he has tattooed people with scars. Doesn't charge them or charges them much less. That it's something that I've been looking at more as the world around us. It's very hard to feel positive about. And I realize how many of those individuals there are, how often you can hear those stories if you listen. If you listen. They're there and help.
Yeah, that is a sweet one. And, I don't know anything about the person's experience or how they told the story, but the way you told it, it wasn't like, oh, there are these poor people who have scars and I can help them. I can do something. That's that abundance feeling. That's a different frame from which to act. Yeah. And I would like to just think about this. You know how many people here would be alive if people hadn't devoted enormous amounts of totally selfless care to you when you were an infant? No one. Anybody who's had a baby knows no one survives. No human being survived without huge amounts of care. So every single person is entirely dependent on this vast body of care that happens all the time that culturally is, if we meet someone with a baby, we might talk about it, or in our family, we might talk about it. But it's like you don't talk about the sky, but it's there. We can talk about the sky. We can talk about all the amazing and wonderful things people do. And speaking of the political environment, I'm not supposed to advocate politically, but there's someone I'm not going to name, but I love for mayor in Minneapolis, and I just was like at a panel. He's with the other mayors doing whatever you call it, like they answer questions. And his closing statement was just like, "This is an amazing community." We'd spend a lot of time talking about, well, how are we going to, protect immigrant communities from brutal federal ICE tactics or something, and how are we going to blah blah blah. And so this is an amazing community. We have so much material wealth, which in any American city is true. We have so much wealth of goodwill and care and creative talent. That's all he said. He was just like, this is an incredible place. Abundance. So I just think this can help us to keep going. And then, organize maybe to do something that would help people from that position. Susan Griffin is quoted in a Bell Hooks book She writes, when a movement for liberation defines itself by hatred for the enemy, it begins to defeat itself. Its very notions cease to be healing. Okay, other voices. Any kinds of things are welcome. Yeah.
It's more academic, but I think you probably use Cleary's translation more for your book, where you were issued Amarita's translation. You didn't play our Garland Sutra.
Who published the second one you cited?
Owl Press.
Yeah.
I love yours.
So this is a little bit academic, yes. So for all the quotations from the sutra we used, I was using all Cleary because I do think it's the most beautiful of them, and in some cases maybe the most clear sounding. But this is so in the weeds. It's basically impossible to get permissions from the Cleary estate to use anything beyond fair use amount of quotation in a book. So I had too much. So then I had to go through and find 3 other translations and find all the sections I had used Cleary and replace them. So I've carefully come under word count for fair use for that translation, for Cleary's, and for another one. And then in some places I paraphrase. So life is great if you're an author of Buddhist texts. All love for the Cleary estate. I'm glad the books are there. So yeah, that was really fun. But I made it work. So I am familiar with it. I did use it in the book, I think, if I'm hearing right. Yes.
Turn back to another book, yours, Three Natures.
Like.
We're on one page 89. Three Natures.
Vasubandhu's Three Natures, the full title of the book. My last book.
So, duality is not oneness, and it's important to distinguish between the two to avoid the so-called spiritual bypass. You don't want on to another subject. Could you explain that?
Non-duality. Well, non-duality is an important theme of this text. The Sanskrit advaya is there, but actually in the second line of the text, no, first line of the text, advaya occurs. So the opening line of the text we're commenting on says, Dharma nature is all-pervading harmony without duality. Without duality is the Chinese characters are not two, advaya. So non-duality is a central theme of the text. So you're well within your rights. So non-duality is not oneness. So when we say non-duality, it can mean various things in different traditions. In some traditions, they mean non-duality between the self and the divine. In particular, that's an emphasis in the Advaita Vedanta Hindu tradition. So saying that the divine Brahma and the self are one thing, inseparable. But non-duality in Buddhist text generally means the non-duality of anything you think is dual. So that is to say, if I think I am separate from you, that's not true. If I think this hand is separate from that hand, that's not true. If I think that this moment is separate from 1,000 years ago, not true. All of those things, you might be like, this is ridiculous. Obviously, those things are separate. That's fine. Enjoy. But the logic by which this is explained, and it's determined through a logical philosophical system, is that the things that make things appear to be separate are always mental events. So we only experience things as separate in any way through dualistic propositions. That's a fancy word. Through seeing them as like opposite things or separate things, is because our mind has made them appear to us in that way. So in this moment, you might be like, well, sight is different than sound. But that's something your mind had to be conditioned to perceive. I think it's very likely that a baby is just like, Right? They're not like, oh yeah, that's that. They're just like, whoa, right? So, over time, through linguistic conditioning and various other elements, you begin to be like, okay, their sound, their sight, sensations of the body are a distinct thing separate from other kind of sensations. They start to be like, oh, this is my hand, right? You can see this happen to a baby. It's like they're chewing on their foot and they're like, it's weird. There's two things happening here. Chewing and foot sensation. Anyway, so sorry. I've been driving for a long time. Non-duality is saying that anything that you think is dual is not absolutely dual. It doesn't mean like dualistic propositions or dualistic thoughts aren't helpful and useful, right? So it's like, it is useful to know that my foot is not food, for example, and so forth. All useful, it's fine, but they're not absolutely true things. But one of the things that can happen is that people think non-duality means, well, everything's not just all one. And that is not really Buddhist non-duality. Every once in a while, I'll talk about oneness, but oneness collapses possibilities. If everything is one, how can anything possibly happen? Nothing can change. The oneness is a philosophical, very problematic proposition. Like if everything is one, it's like, was the universe created at one time for all time? The entirety of time and space was created, and it's this block, and we happen to be seeing little pieces of it somehow? That doesn't make any sense. Plus, Buddhism is about possibility. So if everything's one, that's not like a bunch of possibilities. Well, one. Non-duality proliferates possibilities. You see that something you're fixated on its dualisticness. Those people are evil and I'm right. Now I can really suffer. Maybe I can make some other people suffer too. Instead, these people have conditioning views that I think are unhelpful. I have some conditioned views that I'm not quite clear, but I'm doing my best. And maybe somehow I can relate to them in a way that can help us all be more free. Non-duality is like softening the rigidity of those things on which we get caught. But it's not about saying everything is one, which is far too fixed for Mahayana Buddhism. Thanks.
To add on to that, there's a beautiful line in Faith of Mind that says, just say not to. Just stop. Just say not to. They'll make that leap to, well, then always one. We have to know when to stop.
Nice. Go ahead.
Made this comment about conditioning, where we are almost trying to counter that conditioning with seeing things. Working with that so that you're not just creating more concepts, but you try
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I cause a lot of trouble. So I don't have any illusion. I probably have a lot of illusions, but I have some sense that it's hard to know. I don't. All these teachings on things being indeterminate makes me, I feel, genuinely humble. But yeah, it's really worth trying to discern what can I do that will actually help. And I do think, a couple practices that are really root toward tradition relate to this. One is the practice of just doing very simple meditation. So Zazen is a non-dual meditation practice because the idea is we're not choosing an object to try and attain. We're not trying to accomplish an object. We're not trying to focus on a particular object. So objectlessness is a radical expression of non-duality. We're saying, I'm not going to wait for some kind of non-duality. I'm just going to be a little less dualistic right now. I just like opening up. Just sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, mind. It's already here. So that plant seeds for the ability to be like that, to be in situations and have what's happening aerated by this sense of not adding a layer of conceptualization. So that's good, but then it's also good to have some concepts, I think, because otherwise, what we do. I might be like sitting in the corner talking to the wall because I wouldn't know that you were people. So I have concepts. You're people. You matter to me. That's important. So, we can come back when a good kind of, let's see, we'll put it this way. A good key that you're getting really caught by duality is if you're trying to control things. So if you realize I'm really focused on controlling this, you're in trouble. You've made something into an object that you think you can manipulate. And that's an opportunity to come back and realize, oh, my mind has made this into a very dualistic situation where I'm the one who's right and I'm trying to get what I want. And see if you can just soften and come back and then ask the question, what if I frame this as what can I offer in this moment of relationship that will help? And that's just different. So when I'm interacting with people who are very different, say for me, politically, I don't. Does anyone here think we can control the people we disagree with politically? I mean, really? How about even your spouses? When you're mad at them, do you think you can control them? I mean, but if you really look, you'll see your mind kind of thinking it can. I will successfully explain to them so they'll know it the right way, or I'll convince them in some clever way, or I'll give them just the right thing so they'll stop, whatever it is. When you see that sense that you're trying to control, you realize this is really strong dualism, come back and just be like, there's some kind of relationship here that's a little bit more fuzzy. And then think about an offering instead of a control. And that will soften that sense that's turning things into a world of objects to be controlled. So I'm realizing, everybody, that it's 8:30. You've all been sitting here on a Friday night looking very alert. I'd like to give you all a gold star for your practice, which is pretty much just paying attention, which really works out for me when I'm teaching. So thank you for that. But I'm grateful that you're doing this. I think maybe I'm going to see a lot of you tomorrow, which is wonderful. But some of you I probably will not. So I appreciate your attention. I make an offering. Who knows what you'll do with it? The nice thing I have is I actually have a lot of faith that you're already doing a lot of wonderful things. So that's great. Enjoy them. And if you think also there's some possibility, see what's next. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And I think we just get up.
Yeah, a couple of closing remarks. Business items. If you haven't paid yet, please swing by the table. Be glad to give you the opportunity to practice generosity and receive your offerings for help supporting children and teachers like that. Secondly, Ben has books that we'd be happy to sell to you and sign for you. So please also make a stop there. And lastly, I know there are some of you who aren't on my email list. If you'd like to be added to it, I'll put out a sheet of paper where you can just take down your name and your email. So every Monday I send an email and outlines what Crooked River Zen has coming up in the year. So it's your best way to stay informed about wonderful events like this.
Thank you. And if you already have a book, I'd be happy to sign it as well. Thanks.
Yeah, and I want John, follow John's direction. These are emails. Yeah. As soon as everybody,
I don't think you're gonna be loving the chairs around.
Hi, could I take that chair? Oh, it's on this way. Thank you.